The nakshatra Anuradha translates quite literally from ancient Sanskrit to the star that follows Radha, or more simply, devotion. And across classical astrological texts, it is universally celebrated as the star of success. This specific celestial blueprint shows us exactly how profound, unwavering devotion, uncompromising resilience, and a really intense internal friction shape the very foundation of the human psyche. So, as you settle in here with us, I want you to just take a breath, take in the comforting, rich scent of aged wood and old books, and listen to the gentle clinking of your porcelain teacup resting against its saucer and the timeless, quiet corners of Cafe Karma International.
Our mission for you today in this deep dive is to explore the absolute heavenly level of Anuradha. We're going to decipher how this specific cosmic architecture operates, pulling apart the psychological forces of devotion and friction it represents, well, before they even touch our mundane, everyday world.
Right.
We are essentially looking at the foundational source code of how true, unshakable success is constructed in the human mind long before any external achievements are ever realized.
And to really understand how that source code is built, we have to start by looking at the exact real estate this star occupies in the sky. Because it's not sitting in some light, breezy, uncomplicated sector of the zodiac.
No, not at all. Astronomically, Anuradha spans exactly from 3 degrees and 20 minutes to 16 degrees and 40 minutes within the zodiac sign of Scorpio. We are situated deeply,
Right.
firmly within the heart of the Scorpion.
Wait.
And psychologically speaking, Scorpio is a space in the sky that deals entirely with the hidden, the fiercely emotional, and very often the turbulent, muddy depths of human experience. It's the realm of our deepest secrets, of our unhealed trauma, and of profound vulnerability.
Which makes the primary symbol for the space so incredibly fascinating to me. Sitting right there, dead center in that intense, emotional, sometimes chaotic water sign is the lotus flower. And as you take a slow sip of your melange, I want you to really visualize this image because it tells you everything you need to know about the Anuradha mindset.
It really does.
The lotus represents ultimate, uncompromising resilience. Why? Because it only blossoms in absolute purity and beauty despite growing in dark, muddy, stagnant waters. The mud represents our trauma. It represents our worldly attachments, our grief, and, the sheer chaos of our environment.
And crucially, the lotus does not reject that mud. It doesn't try to escape it, it doesn't complain about it, and it certainly doesn't pretend the mud isn't there. It uses that very mud as the nutritional fuel to grow upward toward the light.
Wow.
The mud is the necessary resistance required for the growth. Without the mud, there is no lotus.
If you want to picture how this actually looks in daily life, imagine a person who somehow manages to maintain their absolute integrity, their baseline kindness, and their moral center while navigating an incredibly toxic or chaotic corporate workplace. You know the exact type of environment everyone else is gossiping, backstabbing, or just drowning in the negativity of the office politics.
Oh, absolutely.
But this one person simply does not let the mud around them dictate the purity of their actions. They don't absorb the toxicity. They remain entirely unbothered and untainted by the mess they are rooted in.
That is a brilliant way to frame the psychological reality of this star. That quiet, unyielding resilience is the absolute core of Anuradha. But to fully deepen your understanding of this architecture, we have to look beyond just the lotus. There are alternative symbols intimately attached to this nakshatra, and they add some very essential layers to this journey of success. First, we have the triumphal archway.
Right, the archway. When I was looking into that symbol, it struck me as such a powerful psychological image. It signifies a major threshold, doesn't it?
Yes, it signifies the explicit transition into a new, successful life. Think of the massive stone arches that ancient leaders or generals would pass through after securing a terribly hard-fought victory. You don't walk through a triumphal archway if you haven't been in the trenches.
You have to earn it.
Exactly. It tells us that the success promised by Anuradha is not simply handed to you by luck. It is the ultimate threshold you finally cross after a long, grueling period of struggle, discipline, and endurance in the mud.
And then there's the second alternative symbol, which feels a bit more protective or maybe even defensive, the staff.
The staff is intensely practical. In those dark, unpredictable waters of Scorpio we mentioned earlier, the staff represents courage, safety, and protection. It is the steadying force, the physical anchor that allows the individual to navigate the dangerous emotional depths without being swept away by the current. If you're going to wade through the darkest parts of the human psyche, you need a psychological spine. You need something solid to lean on when the waters get rough.
That idea of wading through the dark without being corrupted by it, that takes a very specific kind of moral compass. And if you look at the ancient myths tied to this exact part of the sky, you see exactly where that compass comes from. The presiding deity of this celestial space is Mitra. He's the god of friendship, of cordiality, and of true partnership. But I have to ask, in a zodiac sign like Scorpio, which is notoriously secretive, fiercely protective, and often deeply isolated, how does the god of friendly cordiality even fit in? It feels like a massive contradiction.
It does feel like a paradox at first glance, but it's actually the psychological cure to Scorpio's isolation. Mitra represents the social contract. In a space where people naturally build high walls to protect their vulnerabilities, Mitra is the embodiment of selfless love. He represents the fundamental understanding that we are bound together by mutual respect and collaboration, not by fear or suspicion. To truly grasp the quiet power of Mitra, we have to look at the psychological contrast provided by his cosmic counterpart, Varuna.
The god of the cosmic ocean.
Exactly. In the ancient texts, Mitra and Varuna are almost always invoked together as an inseparable dual force. They represent two wildly different ways of interacting with the world and with other people. While Mitra represents the clear light of day, gentle diplomacy, and cooperative love, Varuna represents the vast, fathomless cosmic ocean. And with that oceanic power comes the potential for selfish lust, for blind greed, and for the overwhelming ego-driven urge to simply consume whatever you desire.
There is a profound myth that perfectly illustrates this exact psychological dynamic between the two of them. The story goes that both of these gods, Mitra and Varuna, encountered the incredibly beautiful celestial nymph, Urvashi, and their radically different reactions to her define the ultimate choice at the heart of Anuradha. Varuna approached Urvashi with aggressive lust. He essentially demanded her submission to his immense power. He wanted to possess her, to consume her, to make her an object belonging entirely to his ocean.
And Urvashi's response is the crux of the entire lesson. She rejected Varuna's greed entirely. She was not swayed by his overwhelming power, and she refused to bow to his demands. Instead, she chose Mitra. And she chose him precisely because of his selfless, deeply respectful love. Mitra didn't want to own her. He wanted to honor her. This myth teaches us that the essence of Anuradha's success is about choosing the path of honoring another person's agency.
It is the ultimate choice between selfish desire and selfless connection.
Yes, it is realizing that trying to forcefully possess something or someone ultimately destroys the connection. You crush the very thing you wanted to hold, whereas offering respect, giving someone their freedom, and building unconditional partnership creates something practically indestructible.
And that conscious choice of selfless connection leads directly into the highest, most ultimate form of love, which brings us right back to the very name of the star. It is about unconditional devotion, or what is beautifully known in Sanskrit as bhakti.
Bhakti is a concept that can be incredibly difficult for the modern transactional mind to fully grasp. We live in a world of contracts and expectations.
Because we are so conditioned to expect a return on our investment. If I do this for you, you must do that for me. But the name Anuradha connects directly to the unconditional, entirely selfless devotion of the goddess Radha to Lord Krishna. Radha's love asked for absolutely nothing in return. She didn't want status, she didn't want a legal contract, she didn't even demand Krishna's exclusive physical presence. She simply offered her entire being to him.
Which, on a psychological and spiritual level, is a profound metaphor. Radha and Krishna represent the microcosm and the macrocosm. Radha is our individual human soul, the microcosm, experiencing this eternal, deep spiritual urge to unite with the macrocosm, the divine, the infinite universe, and doing so without expecting any material reward, without keeping score. It is devotion purely for the sake of devotion.
But here is where the architecture of this star gets incredibly interesting. That level of devotion. It is not just a passive romantic feeling where you sit around sighing and longing for connection. In the ancient framework of this system, devotion is a literal mechanical force in the universe. It moves things.
It is a profound mechanism. In the timeless, quiet atmosphere of this coffee house, let's take a moment to really unpack Anuradha's unique power. It is known as Radhana Shakti. This translates directly to the power of worship and devotion. It is the spiritual engine that drives this entire nakshatra, and it operates on a very specific, almost mathematical set of cosmic physics.
The mechanics of this power, this Radhana Shakti, require two distinct sequential movements, ascension and descension. You absolutely cannot have one without the other. Let's start with ascension. Ascension is the human effort. It is the discipline, the grueling daily practice, the pure aspiration reaching upward from the muddy material world. It is the relentless work you do when no one is watching and no one is applauding.
And that human effort is not just for self-improvement. It acts as a necessary mechanical trigger. Ascension triggers descension. Descension is the divine grace, the universal support, the cosmic luck reaching downward to meet you.
To make this really tangible, imagine holding your hand out in the pitch dark. You are surrounded by absolute blackness. You have to make the active, physical effort to reach your arm upward, to stretch into the unknown, trusting that something is there. That is the ascension. You have to do that before the universe can reach down, grab your hand, and pull you up into the light. The grace simply does not arrive until the human effort is made first. You cannot just stand in the dark with your arms at your sides and expect to be saved.
That is a vital point. Think about how often people sit back and wait for their big break, or wait for some divine inspiration to strike before they start doing the actual work. The Code of Anuradha flips that entirely. It says the universe is literally blind to you until you put in the grueling, everyday discipline first. The universe requires your active participation. It demands your devotion to the process.
But when those two forces finally do meet,
When they meet, the results are staggering. When the tireless, uncompromising human effort of ascension directly connects with the divine grace of descension, the ultimate result for the native is absolute honor and abundance. It is a form of success that is earned through rigorous discipline and then magnified and blessed by grace. That combination makes the success structurally unshakable. You didn't just stumble into it, you built the bedrock foundation for it, and the universe crowned it.
I love that concept of building the foundation, but I think we need to be really honest with you, our listener, about what building that foundation actually feels like on a day-to-day basis. Because reaching that state of grace involves navigating a tremendous, almost agonizing amount of internal friction. We need to break down the technical blueprint of this nakshatra because this is where the psychological tension really sits and festers.
The cosmic clash operating behind the scenes here is intensely complex. Let's look at the planetary rulers involved. Anuradha is ruled by Saturn, known in Vedic astrology as Shani. Saturn is the planet of cold discipline, severe limitation, delay, and immense karmic resilience. Saturn demands endless patience. It wants everything structured, perfect, and slow. Honestly, Saturn can be quite granted rigid, severe, and deeply grumpy whenever things are rushed, overly emotional, or left up to chance.
Right, Saturn is the ultimate taskmaster holding the stopwatch, telling you you're not ready yet. But as we mentioned earlier, this nakshatra sits entirely within the zodiac sign of Scorpio. And Scorpio is ruled by Mars, or Mangala.
And Mars is the exact polar opposite energy to Saturn. Mars is the planet of fiery passion, of dynamic speed, pure instinct, and raw, unapologetic aggression. It wants to conquer, it wants to initiate, and it wants to do it immediately.
To give you a visceral sense of what this intense astrological combination feels like inside a person's head, imagine having two incredibly stubborn roommates forced to share a single car on a road trip. Mars is the roommate behind the wheel who wants to aggressively speed down the highway at 100 miles an hour, shouting and blasting the radio. And Saturn is the roommate sitting in the passenger seat who is constantly aggressively pulling the emergency parking brake because they think they missed a road sign.
It is an excruciating amount of internal tension. In a human being, this looks like someone who possesses blinding, Mars-like ambition to launch a massive project, start a movement, or completely change their life. But they are simultaneously cursed with Saturn's suffocating obsession that every single minute detail must be absolutely flawless before they take a single step. The friction between the burning desire to act and the cold demand to perfect is agonizing.
Mars is pure dynamic speed, constantly shouting, "Off gets, let's go, let's attack the day." While Saturn stares back coldly, demands absolute control, and enforces brutal restriction. So the obvious question is, how does a person with the Anuradha energy survive this deadly clash of fire and ice? How do they not just completely burn out from the internal stress of those two planets fighting for the steering wheel?
The answer to their survival lies in the foundational classification of the star itself. It's how the energy naturally adapts to survive the pressure. Astrologically, Anuradha is classified as a deva, which means divine or godlike in its core temperament. But more importantly, it is classified as Mridu, which translates to soft, mild, and tender.
Soft and tender, with Mars and Saturn running the show behind the scenes.
Exactly. That is the absolute genius of this nakshatra. The harsh, grating internal friction of Saturn and Mars is smoothed over by this highly adaptable, incredibly gentle exterior. They don't project their internal war onto the outside world. Instead, they develop a highly diplomatic approach. They cultivate a certain shmeh, a brilliant, adaptable charm and social grace that completely hides the intense, obsessive drive operating just beneath the surface.
Wow. So they're smiling politely, being incredibly cordial in the boardroom or at the dinner party, just like Mitra, the god of friendship, while underneath, Mars and Saturn are furiously powering the engine of their ambition. It teaches you that true lasting power does not actually lie in explosive force, loud dominance, or throwing your weight around. It lies in immense patience, extreme tolerance, and quiet, unrelenting devotion to the goal. You win by outlasting everyone else, and you do it with a smile.
When you synthesize all of these distinct elements, the ancient mythology of Mitra's respect, the celestial mechanics of reaching up into the dark for grace, and the incredibly intense internal friction masked entirely by a gentle diplomatic charm, you are left with a profoundly moving picture of what true, absolute devotion actually looks like. I want you to sit back and imagine that lotus flower one final time.
Just picture it sitting there, quietly in the dark, muddy water. It is completely unbothered by the chaos, the toxicity, and the turbulent currents swirling below the surface. It is perfectly still. It is enduring the immense friction of its harsh environment without a single complaint, just patiently, beautifully waiting for the dawn to pull that celestial grace down to earth.
That vivid, lingering image of heavenly devotion is where we will leave you.
Because understanding this profound celestial architecture, this intricate blueprint of resilience, friction, and grace is only the beginning. Right now, you are sitting quietly at the table in Cafe Karma, completely ready for how these intense, unseen forces actually manifest on a tangible, earthly level.